welcome to the NFT Jungle. I am Emma, aka Nifty Meta Girl, and we have today with us
Boss Mom 99.
I was wondering if your name was changing.
Well, I was gonna say don't F it up, Mom 99, but I didn't know if that would be fitting or not.
And you might also know her as Jaden.
Oh, I forgot about that name completely. Yeah, that's my real name. Hello, Jaden. Yeah, that is also my name. I thought you were gonna call me Carol Baskins.
Yeah, that definitely fits for sure. Oh, and hey, Gabe. Oh.
Finally.
Producer Gabe, I guess he's not here.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Well, I guess we better get to the episode then, huh?
Yep.
So we have something a little bit out of the norm today as far as we are going to hop right into our interview. We have a great interview with co-founder of MetaJungle and avid collector Alphatrilogy, and he's going to be sharing some information with us for one-of-one NFT artists. So a lot of great content, and we know that you will enjoy it. So we can go ahead and get to that interview. All right, and as I mentioned, we do have a special guest with us today. This is co-founder of MetaJungle, Alphatrilogy, who is also an avid collector. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We've got a few questions for you.
Awesome.
You up for that?
Always.
Awesome. So let's start off with how long have you been collecting, and what do you like to collect?
I've been a collector of all types of things for a long period of time, probably 20 plus years. And I collect all kinds of collectible things in real life and physical artwork. And I collect in the NFT space, digital art, generative art. I collect NFTs that represent physical ownership of physical collectibles, and also one-of-one photography.
So that covers a lot of the genres for sure.
Pretty diverse collection, yes.
And a lot of collectors in the space are also artists. Would you fall into that category as well?
Absolutely not.
Okay, no. Let me chime in here. I'm pretty sure I've seen a picture of you on a lift painting a mural before.
I did paint a mural one time. Would not classify myself as an artist, but it was of necessity, so I did it.
It was a pretty big one, wasn't it?
It was big. So it was we were building an attraction, and I was trying to get an artist to come in. We were on a deadline to paint a mural for me on a rock wall out on this piece of property that's in the middle of nowhere. And when I talk to the artist and tell him what I was looking for, I would just get a hard no. It's like, nope, can't do that. Nope, there's no way. Nope, that's not possible. So just did it myself. And some of our team members, Emma helped on that too. But we actually built, or we painted a image that was of Bigfoot. The story was on Bigfoot. It was an attraction that was Bigfoot based, and it was a 600-foot long mural on a rock wall. That was, the bottom of it was 35 feet off of the ground, and it went up to about 55 feet, and then there's parts of it that are about 70 feet high. I had to actually stand on the top rail of the lift and reach as high as I could to get the eyeball that we put over the top of this 600-foot long mural. But I was super happy with the way it came out, and it was fun to do. It was a lot of fun. But no, I'm definitely not an artist.
Huh. Well, Alphatrilogy, the collector and the daredevil, huh?
It was funny. Hundreds of thousands of people have seen that. So, yeah, it was part of an attraction. And it was really funny because, people are, I don't know, people are interesting. So 75-80% of people that saw it thought that Native Americans had done it. And so that was, that was part of the storyline for the attraction that we were building. But it was funny because a lot of people I'd hear people talking later. Yeah, can you believe there's, the Native Americans or whatever did this hundreds of years ago. It's still there on that rock wall. So that was very fulfilling.
You're about to break a lot of people's hearts.
Yeah. for sure.
Yeah, there was a lot of stories connected to that. Never, though, was it, hey, I bet somebody brought a lift in and climbed up there and painted that.
Yeah, most people did not believe that was a thing.
It was an adventure for sure.
For sure.
Well, so in this collecting space, I noticed that we don't see a lot of generative art on your Twitter feed. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, there is actually. I'm very careful about what I talk about in the generative art space just because there's been so many projects that have turned out to be rug pulls and that have been, intentional, really intentional frauds or failures. And so I don't like to talk about something that, a lot of people coming in the space, they look at what other people buy, they find a collector, say, oh yeah, I'm going to look at what he does. And then I don't want people following me into something that may not be real or legitimate. And so very careful about what I talk about.
So are you careful because you've been burned on a project before?
I think anyone that's been in the NFT space for very long that has bought into generative art projects has probably bought some that are, rug pulls that have failed. So yes, I have been, and so it's something I'm definitely very aware of. Very rarely happens at this point because after you get a little bit of experience behind you, you kind of start figuring it out, and so I'm very careful about what projects I buy into. And for that reason, I'll probably start talking about some of the generative art I buy a little bit more in my Twitter feeds, but I've been careful about that.
So, and I know that you just said you've been burned by generative projects. Have you been burned by any one-of-one artists or pieces you bought?
Unfortunately, I have. Not in the photography space, but in the one digital art space. I've had a handful of pieces that I've bought that the artist were maybe didn't have any integrity or had copied someone else's stuff or had minted the same pieces multiple times and called them all one-of-ones. So some of that stuff that's happened. I will say it's probably been a good thing for me because it's a great learning experience. And since I'm very actively involved in a team that's building platforms that will create filtering, search systems for some of the big marketplace platforms, it's probably good because I learned things that, hey, we got to do this in order to keep this from happening to other people. And so we'll put things in place that will prevent that from happening to others.
Awesome.
Well, and that makes sense too, because, with your interaction, we notice you interact a lot with different artists. And I know you're active in making suggestions to one-of-one artists. Do you have any of those suggestions you'd like to share with us today?
Sure. There's been some things that I've been telling artists for quite some time, trying to reinforce the importance of, really from a collector standpoint. But I've tried to say this, and I guess I'll say this again. So this is things that's really important to a collector. There are things that are important to me as a collector. But as an artist, it goes beyond that. For you, it's more than just, okay, this collector wants this information. One of the reasons this information is so important to me is because I know for 100% fact that most of this information will be used in the near future on platforms for searching and filtering collections. And so there is a really, really important reason why I've told artists, hey, you need to do this, because it's going to have a huge impact on the reach that you're going to have and the exposure that your collections will get. And so if you have a collection and you don't want to put your name on it, and you can sell 100 or 200 ETH in that collection, then you may not need to do these things because you'll get a free pass or a bypass, whatever. But for the average normal artist in the space, these things are going to make a huge difference in whether you get exposed or not in the future.
And even for the long term, huh?
Yeah,
Big
it's a
picture,
long-term, really important thing for you to do. And some artists are saying, well, you don't have to do this. I've been in this space for 6 months and this isn't necessary. Well, it's fine. But don't live in the past because the future's coming fast and there's going to be huge changes in the future, has to be, in order for the space to actually work.
Definitely, we're early in for sure.
Absolutely.
And that does lead into my next question. So, what kind of response have you seen from artists as you're making these suggestions?
Well, the suggestions I've made have been, okay, so make sure you use the description space. So you start, you put in descriptions, you use your artist name, you put the edition size. If it's a one of one, which, if you're a one of one artist, most of your art should be one of one. Make sure you put that in the description. And then a lot of artists, they'll put it in their Twitter, when they do a Twitter post about it, hey, this is one of one, and by so-and-so, then they don't put it in the description. Yeah, and so here's the story behind it. They don't put it in the description. You really, really need to do that because that is what's going to be used to do searches and for filtering for your collections in the near future. It's how you're going to get exposure. The story behind the collection, really important. The bio of the artist, really, really important. Don't leave it off. Don't think, oh, my story's not important. It's not. It's beyond just as a way to connect to a collector, which it is a very important way of connecting with a collector. It's like a riddle. It's beyond that. It's really important because the search and filtering functions are going to use the information you put there to help people find you. And so you've got to keep that in mind. Really, really important. And then the collection size. It's another thing I've been talking about it a lot. And so, a few months ago, there was like some wildness going on in the space. There wasn't that many artists in it. So you had some photographers and they would put in these collections and they'd have 100-piece collection and they'd sell the collection out. And it was just like this wild craziness. It was amazing, super fun. And I am happy for everyone that was able to participate in that. Well, that time is gone. And so we may get back to that, and an artist has the opportunity to do that again in the future, but they have to build up to where there's demand for their artwork. And the best and easiest way to do that is to limit your collection sizes and get some collections sold out. And it's important from a marketing standpoint for you to be able to have a collection that's sold out, sold hopefully to the right people, to the right collectors that are going to help protect your floor price and start driving the value and demand for you up. Beyond that, though, it's important from a platform perspective because there's going to be liquidity tools that come into play very near future, and a collection to qualify to be even considered for these liquidity tools, your collection has to be sold out. And when that happens, collectors are going to start buying art and buying pieces that are either from sold out collections or from artists that they're confident are going to sell out. And that is going to come in the near future. I've been talking about it for, months now, and I'm telling you, it's getting really close. It's really important. So limit your collection size. Say what your collection size is in your about collection descriptions. And we need to get some sold out. It's going to be really important for you.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I've seen you mention here and there that I never realized how important was for artists to include their information in their Discord bios, because I'll go to click on them and go to their collections and I have trouble finding that sometimes.
Yeah, it's really important. You put your links to your Twitter in your Discord, put links to your actual OpenSea collections so that people can find you. When you tweet and you're tweeting about your collection, put a link to your OpenSea collection, because it's crazy when you don't do that and then people are trying to find you and they can't.
And make it obvious, because a lot of times it ends up at the bottom below the hashtags, and a collector misses it.
And in your collection, you have the ability to link to your different social media accounts from within that collection. And it's amazing how many times I'll be looking at a piece, then I want to go and look at their Twitter account, or I want to be able to buy their piece and then tag their Twitter account for them. And there isn't a Twitter link. You don't know who it is. Sometimes these artists, they don't have a Twitter link in their collection and they don't have their name. And it's literally like, who is this? Like you can't even help them market it because they haven't done that stuff themselves.
Well, and I guess on the subject of Twitter, do you think it's a good idea for one artist to DM collectors to show their own work?
I think DMing a collector when they haven't solicited that or asked you to do that is a really bad idea. I get them nonstop all day from different artists. And yeah, I don't think it's a good look for an artist to just send messages, especially when I get messages from artists saying, please buy my work, please help me. Oh, I'm having problems. Would you please help me? This would change my life or whatever, because, it's not a good look, and it's not, a collector's not necessarily a charity. And so you got to keep that in mind when you're dealing with a collector. They're collecting art that they appreciate and like, and it's important. And then it's a little bit frustrating. I get tons of DMs from people, and it'll be like, hey, please look at my collection. I've been a member of MetaJungle now for, a month, and I've been doing everything right. And I want you to look at you haven't looked at my collection. And a lot of times I have. If they've posted it in MetaJungle, I see it and I'll look at their collection. Everything's right. I don't understand. Please buy this. And I'll go and look at the collection, and they won't have a description. They won't have their name. They won't have their edition sizes. They don't have all the obvious stuff that we talk about nonstop. And I'm not saying that this is like, happens once in a while. 75% of the messages I get are that way. And so a lot of times I go and look at these collections. I've looked at it for 2 times, 5 times. I've interacted directly with the artist. They still haven't made any of those changes. And so at a point, as a collector, you stop. You don't do that. It's like, I have a limited time, just like every other single person on earth. Everyone's busy, and you just don't have time to keep chasing it over and over and over. So the easy thing as an artist, hey, why don't you do those things, and do those things that you might not have to DM collectors, because it's right there. It's easy. You can do it.
And when they look at the collection the first time, they're going to see the things that are important to them and the things that they connect with. And so making that sale is an easier process.
So, on the one-of-one art, definitely on the photography side, most of it I will post, when I buy something, hey, I've bought this. I do that not for myself. I do that so that I can give that artist more exposure, and the more exposure that artist gets, the better for them. And so I tweet about it, and I say, hey, I just bought this, and it's a great piece. It's a cool piece. Here's a link to the collection. Go look at it, etc. For every piece, literally, that I buy, and I buy what I like. I buy art based on, I'm not an expert on art. I buy what I like, what speaks to me, what's emotion evoking. For every piece I buy, literally, I'll look at 4 collections that don't have any of the information. I like the art, but the rest of it's not there, and I don't buy it. And so every time you see me buy one, I can almost guarantee you there was 3 or 4 that I would have bought that I didn't.
That makes a lot of sense, and too, that there's a purpose for it. It's not like you're wanting it for one piece for your collection. It's to help the artist long term to be able to be an established artist.
Yeah, and that's really important, I think, to most collectors. You want the art that you're buying and the artists that you're supporting to be successful. Mm-hmm. And if they're successful, it's a symbiotic. It's a symbiotic relationship because it's better for you. The long-term value, et cetera, is not that huge of a deal to me, but it's still, most collectors, that's something that's important. Mm-hmm. They want to buy something. They want what they buy to be, an investment for them. They want it to be something that's worth something when they leave it to their kids. And so there's some things, obviously, if an artist becomes more and more successful and you own their art, that's kind of a cool thing. It's a great thing. It's a great relationship to have. So
Absolutely. Well, and from my experience working with you, you frequently formulate equations to define business goals. And have you formulated one for this space?
it's true. I do that, and I've done that for a long time. And so anyone that's ever been in a business I own or in an office or whatever that where I have offices, you'll see equations on the wall, not necessarily number equations, but word equations. And so I do that because it helps myself and it helps me see it and remember it, and it helps other people to visualize concepts. But yeah, I have written one for the NFT space, specifically for artists, and I've shared it before, but it's passion plus integrity plus patience equals success. And I really feel like that's the key to being successful as an artist in the NFT space. Passion means that you're passionate about your art. So you're doing something that means something to you. And if you're passionate about what you're doing, that passion shows through. And so regardless of what your medium is, regardless of what you're doing there, your art will speak to somebody because it speaks to you. And so that's really, really important. Don't ever compromise your art. Make sure that's something that you love, that you're passionate about. If you do that, it's the first key to being successful. But there's two other things that are absolutely necessary for you still to succeed. So you've got to have that passion, but you've got to have integrity. And integrity simply means just doing what you say you're going to do. Follow through. And that's an area that actually I see lots and lots of people with passion, and then there's less people with the integrity. And you don't go and change something that you've done. You don't change it without, if a collector is okay with it, it's fine. But I see it all the time. People just redo it and say, oh, something totally different, change it. You can't do that. That's not having integrity. You've got to have integrity in the space, and that will follow you for your entire life. So you've got to make sure that you're being honest and you have that integrity in what you're doing. And then patience. If you don't have patience, you will not make it, no matter how good you are at what you're doing and how much integrity you have. If you don't have the patience, you won't survive. Because, there's a lot of talk about, mental health and mental health issues, but patience. You've got to be able to deal with the time lags that it takes. Things don't happen instantly. They don't even happen slowly. Sometimes it takes a long time, but you've got to be patient, and you've got to just survive and keep trying. Don't give up. Don't stop. Don't let it get to you. And that just requires a ton of patience. And if you're not patient, I honestly believe there is no way for you to survive in the NFT world. And patience also means, you see other people succeed around you, and it's hard. You see somebody else having success. You're like, wait, my stuff's better than their stuff, and I've done better at this than they have. Well, you've got to be patient because your time will, if you have that passion, you have that integrity, it will get noticed. It will drive you to success. And as long as you're patient and you're still there when it's coming. If you've quit beforehand and you've given up and you've thrown in the towel, then obviously you can't make it. So.
Well, I love that and that equation. I mean, it kind of goes back with what we talked about before, trust. Like, integrity is such a big thing, and trust is such a big thing with collectors and artists, and integrity is a big aspect into it. Like, we want to be able to trust you at your word, but we've also been burned a few times, so just prove it to us,
Yeah, and so that's the whole thing with I keep talking about with these descriptions and platforms and the way that platforms are going to start sorting and searching and doing all these things for the integrity is a huge part of that. And so that trust will be built into the system. So if somebody has shown a lack of integrity, that lack of integrity will follow them. And the systems are being created right now to do that. That's something I can assure you of.
Yeah, definitely. And with the patience, something I think that we see, it is important to be patient for the long term, but also being patient in who you are. And so being true to your passion and having the integrity and not changing with every fad that comes along in the space. It's amazing how quickly those things have been apparent. So, oh, this person found success, so I need to change and adapt to do whatever it was that they did to be successful. You can learn from that, but it doesn't mean that you have to go hand in hand with that. There's been artists I've seen that they kind of give up on things that make them special because they think that they need to change because of what's happening in the space, but they kind of give up what makes them special.
Yeah, I mean, that's the combination of passion and patience. You
Yeah.
got to have that passion. You stay true to who you are and to your art. And then that patience involves like how you use your time.
Yeah.
And so use the time productively. The time it takes for you to get recognized, for you to get sales, for you to get that exposure, use that time to make yourself better, to learn about the space, to learn about other artists, to support them. It's such a huge thing, supporting other people. Because if you support other people, you will do better. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
it's part of life. And the more support and help you give others, the better you will do. And so be patient and use that time productively, and you'll win.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's easy. It's easy to talk about. It's not easy to
Exactly.
do because it's really hard. And I'm a very impatient person, so I understand that that difficulty in always being patient.
Well, and maybe picking up, with being active in the community and supporting others, you can align with others. It can help you with those three factors as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Kind of a support system. Well, and are there any other items of advice, anything else you would like to share with us today for one of one artists?
Yeah, I'd say so I see some people that have been really successful. They picked up on those things. They're doing their collections. They're putting in collections that are really tight, really, theme focused, not overloaded or oversaturated with, similar items, etc. They're doing a really good job with that, writing great descriptions. They're checking all the boxes with that. And so I love seeing that. There's still way more that aren't than are. But there are people that are doing that, and they're setting themselves up for long-term success. And they're going to be so far ahead of the curve once people realize why you actually do this. So I'm glad to see that. But there is an opportunity that I see that very, very few people are capitalizing on. And one of the ways I have seen it, and it's really stark obvious to me, is in Twitter, my Twitter post. So I'll post something and it'll be, hey, I bought this this photograph, this landscape photograph, for instance. And what'll happen is a whole bunch of landscape photographers will come in and they will all comment and they'll show their support for their peer. It's great. I mean, I love seeing that. It's great for them. It's great for everyone involved in that situation. I'll post, a portrait photograph, and a whole bunch of portrait photographers will come in and they'll say, "Oh, that's great. Good job. We're really happy," etc. And a little bit of crossover between that, between the different types of photographers. Then I'll post, "Hey, I bought this piece of digital art." And digital artists will come in and say, "Hey, great, good job. We're really happy for you. Congrats to everyone." Very few photographers will come in, and vice versa. I can post something about generative art, And you will not see any one-of-one artist come in and say anything about it
Yeah.
or comment on it or get involved in it at all. They ignore that. It's like, we're supporting our peers.
Yep.
And that's the biggest missed opportunity in the entire NFT space that I see right now, as any artist in the space can capitalize on. Because the other thing that's coming from a platform perspective is social there's going to be social integration into the platforms. And so artists are literally limiting their audience to whatever their genre or medium is. And the smart people that are really going to benefit the most are the artists that are taking advantage of literally, building up a network across all these different types of NFTs and mediums. Because soon who you know and who you're connected with and who you're talking to or who's talking about you is going to have a huge impact on what your eventual exposure is. And if you limit yourself to only your fellow landscape photographers or your fellow portrait photographers or your fellow one-of-one digital artist, you are limiting yourself so much. And so you really should be out building a network in all these different mediums with all these different types of artists and supporting the entire community. Because by doing that later, but not that much later, fairly near future, you're going to be so far ahead of everyone else when all these platform things hit, and most everyone's going to be left in the dust. You have the opportunity to put yourself so far out in advance of everyone else. And it's funny because some of it's obvious. The generative art, so in generative art projects and a lot of one-of-one artists, they don't want anything to do with it. They don't want to talk about it. They sure as hell aren't going to go and respond to somebody's post or tweet about it. They stay away from that. That's not their, but tons of the generative art projects right now, the utility that's like most in favor is, hey, we're going to use a percentage of all of our mint sales and all future royalties to buy art from artists. And then these artists ignore them. They don't go in and they don't. I mean, how hard is it to comment on a tweet and to start integrating yourself? That's how they find you too.
Yep.
And then these projects are buying your stuff.
Yep.
And when a generative art project, when Women and Weapons goes and they say, hey, we're buying Hannah's art, then 3,000 people are looking at Hannah saying, hey, she's a great artist. We should go buy some of her art.
Exactly.
It's the simplest thing in the world, and it's being ignored by so many artists of all kinds. And so literally that's what this opportunity that exists, that it's kind of mind-boggling to me, but it's very obvious, but it's so neglected in the entire space. Huge opportunity. I highly, highly suggest to all artists that you start really looking outside your medium and start showing support and building networks that are bigger than just what you're into, because it will impact you in a huge, huge way. It'll benefit you.
Yeah, that's very beneficial feedback for sure. Because it is a really small space right now, too, and it's not going to continue to be that way. There's opportunities right now that are not going to be there as time goes on.
Yeah, so some of the opportunities that exist and the opportunities to be ahead of the entire curve are going to dry up. I mean, they're not going to stay opportunities forever. And so the people that capitalize on it, that kind of get out of the past and start really looking hard at what the future is, those people are going to benefit in a huge, huge way. And yeah, why would a generative art project that has a mission to support artists, why would they not buy from a photographer?
Absolutely.
Of course they would. Why would they not? And so why would you not take advantage of like starting to be known by these projects? It's a huge opportunity. And whenever that generative art project buys your thing and they buy your piece and they say, hey, this is something that we love, we're using community treasury money to buy this, then all of a sudden there's thousands of other collectors that are being introduced to you at once. Huge opportunity. I highly suggest that people start looking at it and start looking at how they could benefit from that.
Very good. Do you have any other advice?
I probably have advice. I think those things are all things that would be, it's just things that can help set you apart and put you ahead of everyone else. And, you know, my perspective on it, obviously I try to buy a lot of art, and I buy a lot of art. I have people sometimes saying, hey, looks like you just only, you know, buy art from people that are doing what you're saying to do, whatever. And it's not necessarily the case, but there's a reason. There's a really good reason why I'm saying, hey, you really should do this. Because I know that in the near future, there's going to be collections that I can turn around and use as collateral, and I don't have to sell it. But if I need money, I can use it as collateral. These things that are coming very quickly, but only if the collections are set up a certain way. And so, yeah, there's a reason why it looks like I only buy stuff where people are. And then I also know that there's every time I say, hey, you guys should really look at doing this. You should do these things. It's going to be really important in the future. I don't know if there's obviously lots of ego in this entire space, in any space. You have tons of egos. And immediately there'll be somebody, you know, on some Twitter Spaces or somewhere else saying, don't listen to that. You don't have to. I've been here for 7 months in this space, and you don't have to have a description. You don't have to. I've sold X amount, or I've sold this or that. You don't have to do any of this. That's fine. I mean, you don't have to do anything. But I know what's going to happen in the future. And I know that right now, even sometimes collectors, oh yeah, I don't read, you don't have to write a description. I don't read descriptions. I don't care about that. I just look at the art. That's great. More power to them. But I can guarantee you this, whenever somebody says that, collector or artist, and they start telling other people, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Just be true to yourself. If you don't want to write, don't write. Just leave everything blank. Every time I hear someone saying that, I know it's because they don't have any clue what the future is. They don't have any clue what's coming. And a collector, once a collector realizes, oh, the stuff I'm buying, the only way I can ever get any kind of liquidity out of it, long-term, short-term, whatever, is to sell it. But there's other stuff over here that's almost like I can use it as collateral anytime I want instantly, and I can get money against it to be able to do something else. What do you think they're going to buy? So that collector is going to switch. The collectors don't know this. A lot of them don't understand what's coming. But once they realize this, every collector is going to be saying, oh yeah, if it doesn't have this and this and this and this, I'm not buying it. Because why would you?
Right.
And the artists that are telling you, oh, don't do any of this stuff. We own this. We're doing this. We're controlling this. That's great. But you're going to be way behind the curve with them if that's what you're listening to and you're following.
Well, and some of this work is the descriptions are locked once the piece is purchased. So it's not like you can go back and have another opportunity to change it. Once it's purchased, it's locked in. So why not take the time to actually put the information in there so it's there for the long term?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a blockchain, and we start dealing with a blockchain, and there's so many things that are locked up forever. It's like, it's also, you have proof of everything, so that's the beauty of the blockchain. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I would just say to this, to any artist, collector that's listening, if you have people telling you, hey, you don't do this, none of this matters, whatever, remember this. And remember me telling you right now this, because, a few weeks or a few months from now, when these platforms hit and you see what's actually really happening and what's going on, remember, just remember that I told you this and you made a choice to listen to somebody that doesn't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say.
Makes a lot of sense.
And I'm not like some kind of, fortune teller. I know because I'm working in the space.
Right.
I'm not guessing at all. So that's
Well,
all I've got.
From my experience working with you, I know that you have always got the big picture in mind. You have the ability to see the big picture and operate from that big vantage point. And there's a lot of advantages. It's hard when you are working independently to maybe see it from that perspective all the time. And so having the opportunity, one, for artists to talk with collectors and get feedback on what they're looking for, but then also to talk to someone that's more active in the space and a bigger picture helps a lot too, to have that advice.
Yeah, I definitely try to look at things from a big picture perspective. And so looking at what's coming much more so than what's in the past.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And so I think all the advice you gave today is right on track with the MetaJungle mission of learning and sharing and growing and succeeding together.
Yeah, and so one thing I will say about MetaJungle is intriguing to me is, so the entire space and the NFT space, one of the driving factors that you kind of see, I mean, everybody wants to make money. And so there's definitely some greed element to it to some extent. So people are trying to make money. Some people are trying to do it the right way. Some people are trying to do it the wrong way, but it's kind of a driving, motivating factor. And it's funny because I see things all the time that are trying to be monetized that we do at MetaJungle for free. So people, hey, buy our NFT and then you can be part of our community. And then you can, have access to this or that or whatever as a part of the community members. And, I don't like that. Why do I have to pay you to be part of your community? I don't get that. That's a concept doesn't ring true to me. And so I don't like that. When I look at projects, and that's what their message is, pay us and we will give you advice, or we will tell you what's going to happen, or we'll, let you come in and talk to other artists or whatever. To me, it's all ridiculous. And I'm not a big fan of those type of projects. I'm not a big fan of trying to monetize just information and things that people should be readily sharing. And definitely not a big fan of trying to monetize community in that way. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again. Obviously, it's your community, but there's not going to be any, that's not what it's there for. And so
not at all.
you can always go and you can buy some memberships into other communities if that's what you feel is going to benefit you. But you can always come back to MetaJungle where the community's free, and we really are there trying to help you.
Yeah, authenticity's there. It's not contrived.
Yeah, trying to help you navigate the space and be successful in it.
Yep, absolutely.
And hopefully maybe not make some of the mistakes that we probably made when we came into the space and others have made. I mean, that's one of the things. You get to learn from a community of people. As an artist, you get to learn from other artists that have failed and succeeded at different things. Mm-hmm. And they're so open about sharing that, and you can learn from it, and you can as a collector, you can come in and you can learn what you should be looking for and what works and doesn't work. And you can communicate directly with artists. I mean, that's special.
Definitely.
And hopefully, hopefully people continue using it and enjoying it.
Yep, it is a special place. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I know all the information you shared will be very valuable, and we'll look forward maybe to your next visit.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So that's the conclusion of the interview, but we actually caught some extra content for you that we think you would like to hear. So let's get to it.
So, did I sound arrogant or like an asshole? Did I sound okay?
I don't think you sounded any different than normal. I don't think you really did.
I guess I could see where sometimes if people don't know you, whenever you're saying that you know for a fact that something's going to happen or it's going to happen in the future, that they might have a hard time believing you, or because it's kind of different from just giving your opinion as a collector. Like you're saying, you do know this. So I could see where some people might have a hard time wondering like, oh, what does he really know? And having a hard time believing you if they don't know you.
That makes sense, I guess. It's definitely not what I want them to take from that. So that's one of the reasons why I don't do these things very often, because I get I guess I get passionate about what I'm talking about, and so I guess it's possible that what I'm saying comes across more as arrogance than as passion, which is not my intent at all. But I'm going to tell you guys a story, and if you guys want to use this later, you're more than welcome to, because it might help an artist be able to understand where I'm coming from a little bit better, and maybe understand what I'm talking about as far as an opportunity and being early in something better. So if it's okay, I'm going to tell you guys a story, and then you guys can decide if you want to use it or not.
Sounds good.
Like a plan.
So I think I've said before, but in the late 90s, I was starting out in the business world as an entrepreneur in the internet side of things, and was building a internet-based business, like really kind of not at the very beginning of the internet, but really early in the internet. Probably very comparable to the time we are right now in the NFT world, but maybe a little bit later in the internet world when I'm building. And so I saw there's so many correlations between that, what happened then, and what's happening right now. And so I had a business partner, still have that business partner in multiple different businesses. And this business partner was he's a marketing genius, an internet genius. He was at that time. We were fresh out of college, and he's brilliant. And we were going to, we'd go to all these huge internet conferences and shows. And it was pretty wild back in those days. They'd have these internet shows, and there'd be tens of thousands of people. All these, tech people from all over the world would show up at these shows, and the big, huge tech companies at the time, which it was the very beginning of the space. So these companies were all working off of huge amounts of venture capital money, and they're trying to make their place in the space. And they'd spend $5 million or $10 million to host a meal or a dinner for all these people coming in, and they'd throw these giant parties, and there'd be alcohol running freely and all this stuff. And they'd bring in rock bands and all this stuff to, it was just these huge things because they're trying to get their space. And so we'd went to one of these conferences, and I don't even remember what city it was in, but it was a big one. And there was, 10,000 plus people at this conference. They all spent thousands of dollars to go there and to learn about the latest and greatest and what was going on. And at the time, we were still early enough in the space that, the search engine wars were going, and Google had already pretty much established itself as like the predominant, but it was like we're talking early, and so no one knew how the Google algorithm worked. I mean, it was just like there was like
Just a mystery.
it was a complete mystery. My partner actually would go to these small events where you'd pay $10,000 or $20,000 to go for a weekend with all these, great minds, and they would like sit there and they would talk and discuss and try to figure out and pull apart how the algorithm worked and what it was doing and what was important, because everyone knew, hey, search is like this is the future. This is what's going to determine who wins these internet wars, basically, who's going to be at the top, and it's really important. And so anyway, we're at this conference. We just got in. We went to have dinner, and my partner's like, yeah, I'm going to bed early. I'll see you in the morning for breakfast. And I said, okay, I'm going to go down to a bar and have a drink. So I did. We went down to this hotel we're staying at. Found this bar. All the bars are like crazy busy because, there's 10,000 people there, and they come to these events, and they go and they drink, and, it's part of the thing. And I don't drink a lot. My partner doesn't drink at all. I sit in this bar, and I do one of my favorite pastimes. I sit there and I'm sipping a beer, and I'm just people watching, and I love doing it. So especially I'm in a different space than my normal, and I sit there and I watch people. And it's one of the reasons I love portrait photography and street photography. I love watching people because in my mind I can make up what the story is for those people. It has nothing to do with this story, but it's what I was doing. That's why I was there. And crazy busy. The bar was just insane busy. And I had a table, small table, but it was my table. And I didn't know any of the people there. So I'm sitting there, and this guy walks up, and he says, hey, is a seat available? And I was like, yeah, go ahead, have a seat. And he sits down, and crazy nice guy, but he's like pretty subdued and quiet like I am. He's definitely not part of the party scene that's going around. And he orders a drink. And he sits there and he sips his drink like I am. And he's also kind of just people watching. And he's like, hey, so what do you do? And I told him, yeah, we've got a company. It's only a couple years old. And, we're in this space and the internet, and we're trying to, get better. And that's why we come to the shows and we learn, and we really come for the education side of the shows to learn. And my partner and I aren't that great at networkers because it's not our thing. So we're here literally just to learn. And he's like, oh, that's cool. What are you trying to learn? I said, well, the main thing, we want to know what the secret, like what the secret sauce to Google's algorithm is. And everyone's got predictions, and we'll go to other things, and we'll learn what people are thinking it is. He's like, oh, well, I can tell you what the secret sauce is. I was like, really? He's like, oh yeah, I can tell you. And he goes, it's all about, you have to think, you take your company and you take your internet, whatever you're doing on the internet, and you think about user experience, and whatever works best for the user, whatever makes their experience better, that's what you should focus on, because that's what Google's algorithm is focused on. And I thought about it for a little while. I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. He's like, says, what is that? And he's like, well, what do you think it is? Like, what as a user, what's important to you?
What do you find valuable?
Yeah, what's valuable? If you can figure that out, I'll tell you, I'll guarantee you, that's what's important to Google's algorithm. And so I sat there and I talked to this guy for 3 hours, and he was I mean, I knew he was a brilliant person. I could tell when I started talking to him. This guy's brilliant, and he knows what he's talking about. And one of the things he told me during this 3 hours of talking is speed. He's like, as a user, like when you're using something, don't you want it to be fast? And I said, yeah. I mean, I hate waiting. And back then, that was part of the thing. You'd sit there and wait. You'd do anything on the internet. It could take 15 seconds for a page to load. And he's like, it's, speed, isn't that important to you? And it's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is really important. He's like, well, I'm sure it's important to that algorithm too. It's like one of the things it's going to measure is like, how fast does a page load? And so if your pages load slow, fix that. It'll help you. It'll help your organic search results. So he told me these things, and I wasn't writing it down. I was just sitting there talking to him, sipping a beer and enjoying the conversation. I was thinking, hey, this guy might be onto something. He's pretty smart. This is, good stuff. Next morning, I meet my partner for breakfast, and I'm sitting there. He's like, so what'd you do last night? I said, well, I went down to the bar and I drank a beer and I talked to this guy for 3 hours about Google's algorithm. And my partner's laughs. He's like, yeah, I'm sure he did. Everyone's that's the hot topic. Everybody wants to know what it is. And I said, yeah, he had some great ideas he's telling me. My partner's like, what were they? I said, well, he told me just to put myself in the seat and the perspective of the user. And whatever was important to me as a user, that's what's important to the algorithm. And my partner like laughs a little bit. He's like, oh yeah, I mean, that's kind of obvious. It makes sense, huh? I said, yeah. He goes, did he give you anything specific? I said, oh yeah, he told me speed. That was like a really important thing. My partner laughed again. He's like, yeah, that's not part of it. It's not important. I said, it's not? How do you know? He's like, yeah, it's not. He goes, I've went to everything. I've read everything. Speed is not something that the algorithm is looking for. I said, well, this guy told me that speed's really important. That, that speed is part of the user experience, and that's going to determine like what that experience is. If it's a good or bad experience for the user, and that's what's important to Google. They want it to be a good experience because they know that if the experience is good for the user, that the user is going to come back and use them again. So not only does Google's experience have to be good and fast and a great experience, but the experience that they have whenever they go to a site has to be good. And if they get there and the content's not relevant and it takes a long time for pages, that's a bad experience. And that relates directly to Google. And so the people stop using Google. And if the experience is good, they'll use Google more. That's what this guy told me. It seems like it makes sense. And my partner's like, yeah, not part of it. Just, I've been in this for a long time. And it was kind of like it is now in the NFT world. A long time wasn't that long. And it's like I've been in a long time. I've read everything. I've seen everything. I've talked to all the experts. That's not part of it. So we had our breakfast and we went into the keynote, the keynote address for this huge conference with literally thousands of tech guys. And we're sitting there and the guy walks out to give the keynote address. And I turned to my partner. It's like, hey, that's the guy that I had beers with last night. I sat for 3 hours. And I promise you, I was sitting there looking at my partner's face just goes white. He's like, what? I said, that's the guy I was having beers with last night. He's like, there's no way. That can't be the guy you were having beers with. It's like, that's him. And my partner's like, that's the guy that wrote the algorithm for Google. The patent, Google's patent for the algorithm, or actually 100 of them, are in his name. He is the guy. He wrote the algorithm. I was like, he told me that speed matters. And so we went back and we got back from that. And I can guarantee you what we were working on. We were working on redoing our databases to make everything happen faster, cutting page load times, making everything more efficient, making sure that the content on these pages was directly related to what the search was about, and really cleaning our site up, and which was the opposite of what everyone else was telling people to do. So they were doing all these little tricks and things to try and, trick people into their sites. And what we realized is you had to do the opposite of that. You had to make sure that your content was clean, the pages was like set up right. You weren't getting search traffic into a page that wasn't relevant for what it was, and that it was fast, because that's what really the user was looking for. And it worked. We were highly successful. And part of that success was just because we listened. And we talked to someone, what they said kind of made sense. Everyone else was saying, don't do that. That doesn't matter. That's just a waste of time. But this person told us to do it. And I didn't know at the time that the person telling me this was the person that actually
The
knows.
expert.
Yeah. And, but it was,
Mm-hmm.
and it benefited us in a huge way. And so I guess I'm telling that story because, I don't mean to be arrogant, and I'm definitely not saying that, hey, I'm even comparable to the guy that wrote the algorithm, the search algorithm for Google. But I'm telling you, I actually do know what's going on in the space. And if you trust that and you listen and you do these things, it's not going to hurt you. And even if I'm wrong and all the platforms change their minds and they don't use this and they like, oh, we're not going to do this, it's still all about user experience, and that's who wins. So whenever something is really built around user experience, user interface, then that's how things are successful. And these things that we keep saying, hey, make sure you do these collections right. Make sure you make these collections tight. When we say that, it's because that's what's good for the user. And the user in this case is the collector. This is what's going to make it better for them. And it will. And you will win by doing that.
Find success from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why I say it. And not trying to be arrogant about it. It's definitely not what I want to, it's not what I'm trying to accomplish. And I'm not trying to say, hey, I know more than anyone else or anything like that, because I think there's a lot of people that know this. It's just that it hasn't been something that's been required, and it may become something that's required in the future. But at this point, if you do these things that are going to improve that user interface, platforms are being built that are built around that. Their algorithms are going to be designed around user interface or the user experience. And whatever things make that user experience better, that's how that algorithm is going to work. And so if you do these things, you'll be ahead of everyone else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's the point, I guess, I'm trying to make. And hopefully I can do it without coming across too arrogantly.
Well, and I think that insight is really helpful. And I think it's a great opportunity for people just to learn more about you and the reasons behind the advice that you have. And it's also a good reminder that, just to be mindful of advice that's available to you, and just like you said, it doesn't hurt. Even if there wasn't an end game, why not include it? If you think about it, why would they give you the opportunity to include the information if there wasn't any point to it whatsoever?
Yeah, there's something to that for sure, but it definitely is not going to hurt you.
No.
And so putting that information that there's definitely people that don't buy because that information is not there.
Yep.
And just like, the example you said about one of the artists had written, hey, it's not just about well, you can tell it. It was pretty good about the child. Is it going to choke my child?
Oh, so I saw a tweet today from Russ, who's one of the MetaJungle artists, and he, which is Evan, goes by Russ, but he had just said, it's kind of like, if you're producing a product, why are you not including all of the information for the person buying it? So when you look at it from that perspective, you're not going to be buying a product that doesn't have a description to go along with it. And even to the point of like making sure, this might choke your child. I mean, it's kind of a different way of saying it, but yeah, why would someone collect something if they don't know what they're buying? Why would they make that purchase without knowing the information about the piece?
Yeah, and so in the same thing, a lot of collectors, like I don't profess to be a expert at all on art, but I love art, and I buy a lot of art. I buy what I like and what speaks to me. But a lot of times, collectors, they are kind of in the same boat as me, and they want to know that the art is collectible to some extent. And so, that's why galleries are so successful. And, they go and they let someone tell them, hey, this is good, this is worth buying. And that makes them feel better about buying it. Well, in this NFT space, you as an artist have the opportunity to do that reinforcement. And actually, as an artist, you have the opportunity to reinforce that for your fellow artists too. And so there's a lot there that you can accomplish, especially.
Yeah, and going along with that, I heard an artist earlier today speaking on that point, and it helps reiterate it from the artist's point of view. Is he said, you go through the steps of creating a piece of artwork. You go to the spot, you take the image, you took the time to capture the image. You go back to your house or your studio, and you develop the art, and then you have this finished piece, and you mint it. You go through all of these steps, and it means something to you. Why would you not share that? Why would you not then go the extra step of telling that person that might be collecting it, or just putting it out in the world of why this piece is important, why it's special, what it means to you? Why not complete the whole cycle? Why not have that opportunity? You're wanting to connect on a visual level, and that's great, but why miss the opportunity to connect on other levels as well?
Yeah, I mean,
and it was like, yep. I mean, there's a lot of ways to say the same thing, and that was an interesting. Just hearing that from the artist's point of view, that was a good way, to kind of connect those dots as well. Why not have? Why miss out on that opportunity? Why stop short? If you're looking at it as a race, you're stopping right before the finish line.
yeah, and then along that same thing, so that connection is so important, and you have the ability to do that. But from a platform level, back, at the same time they were saying, all these things that I told a story about Google and what was happening. At that time they were saying content is king, and that's become a saying. And I think it really came from that time period. Content is king, content is king. So there's this race to add as much content as you possibly could to your websites. And people were just adding thousands of pages of content just as fast as they could do it. And of course, eventually they realized that, hey, content is king only if it's quality content. And then the content doesn't do any good if it can't be found. That's why their search is so important. And so the same thing we're seeing right now. And that search became more and more refined and got way smarter. And the cream rose to the top. And so the very best content that was the best user experience, that became what was actually getting organic traffic. And in the NFT space, and then in the metaverse, it's going to be the exact same thing from the standpoint of, okay, when there's only a little bit of content or a little bit of product, you don't have to do anything, just put out your product. Well, as there becomes more and more and more and more product, there has to be a way to find that product, and there has to be a way to search that product. And that's what's coming. That's the part that hasn't been there before. In search, still, as advanced as AI is, and it can read some things from a photo, there's a lot it can't. And so that descriptions and stories and the other information that you're putting in becomes so important, because that's literally how your stuff is going to be found by the search engines and algorithms that are being written right now to help start like sorting through this onslaught of product that's being added into the marketplace.
Well, and taking that one step further, I mean, you keep telling people, like giving this advice, and you're like, hey, like it needs to be found and stuff. But in this, like in this space, there's a lot of times where we have to have like trust in the artist, and we build that trust. Like, hey, we trust that this is your piece. This is one of one. And it kind of goes the same. Like you talked to that guy, and what he was saying sounded really valuable and made a lot of sense. Kind of like what you're saying about the suggestions you're making. And you just kind of had to trust that guy. Like you didn't know anything about him. You just trusted like, hey, he does sound like he knows what he's talking about. Like that makes a lot of sense. And then comes to find out it was a guy that literally knew. And I think that just is kind of big. Like it just shows how many opportunities are out there if you just have a little trust and like actually listen to what's being said and do your own research. But you're just like, man, that makes a lot of sense. He might be onto something.
Yeah. So and one of the points of that story is literally we got lucky because we found out who he was, and then we trusted it. And if he hadn't been the keynote speaker, we probably wouldn't have done any of this stuff.
You would have been arguing with your
I
partner.
I made my argument. My partner said nope, and so it was done. And we probably would have never done all those things. We found out who he was, and we're like, oh, we got to do these things. Like, wow, but we almost missed the opportunity. And so after that, we're way more alert to opportunities and being able to think about it from the standpoint of, hey, in any type of system on a marketplace, what is the best thing, the best result end for the user, the best user experience? That's going to ultimately win. That's going to be what wins. And so when a marketplace first starts, or it's a free for all a lot of times, and that's what we've seen in this space. But that free for all erodes. The anarchists don't like it because they like the basic anarchy free for all, but that's going to go away, and the marketplace will become more and more refined, and it'll become more and more driven based off of user experience, and the people providing that experience are going to win. That's the bottom line.
We've seen it happen before, huh?
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't make any sense that it wouldn't continue into this new space.
Yeah, most definitely. So anyway, that's the story. So.
And a good reminder too, it's something to relate to that time period, and in relation to the story is it was still such a new space to be in, and so someone like that had that experience was just kind of hanging out, and people didn't really know who he was, so the opportunity to connect, to be outside of your immediate bubble and connect with someone else in the space led to an opportunity, and very much in this case, having that opportunity, we have that chance right now to connect with people that are, behind the scenes creating things that you may not know about initially. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's the other side of it that I wasn't really thinking about, but that, in the internet world, networking was such an important thing. And so, connecting with the right people in whatever venue you used to do that was incredibly important. And it was a big part of our success in that space. And it's the same is true right now. And if you only, I guess going back to my point about trying to broaden outside of what your medium is or your genre is or what your primary interest
niche.
is, that immediate niche that you're part of, broadening yourself beyond that is really important, because if we had stayed only within the niche of people that were like, the exact same focus, exact same interests that we had, we probably would not have ever got to where we got. And that's probably true in just about anything. If you can broaden beyond that, if you can reach beyond that and start meeting talking to other people, supporting them in what they're doing, taking an interest in what they're doing, that's going to lead to, big things for you in the future and lots of opportunity out there.
Absolutely. It'll be exciting to see where this space leads.
Agreed.
Big things are coming. Well, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It was really cool. That was not how I saw it ending with your bar buddy.
Hey, people watching's a good thing. So
Yeah.
you never know where it's going to end up.
Yeah. Crazy.
So there was a lot of great information shared in the interview today.
I couldn't agree more.
What did you think about it?
I thought it was long, but I'm not complaining because it was full of a lot of really great and valuable information that I think a lot of people, not just one-of-one artists, but artists in general, collectors and everything can kind of take from, learn from, and just grow from. And that's the whole point, I think so.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, with the MetaJungle community especially, that is our whole point, is to learn and grow together so we can find success. And, we hear a lot of feedback in MetaJungle that artists like the opportunity to hear from collectors. So it's always great to have Alphatrilogy on the show. And then also, he does have such a big picture vision of the space and a lot of business experience, a lot of collecting experience. So being able to learn from that is, I think, a benefit for sure.
I couldn't agree more. I would never tell Alpha this, but it's something that he's somebody I really listen to, and I think he has a lot of really valuable information. So I always appreciate it a lot whenever he comes on and shares it with us, our watchers, our listeners, everything. So,
well, we won't tell him.
Thanks. I know my secret's safe in the jungle.
Well, again, this has been a great episode. If you have any comments to share, please share them below, or you can also jump over to metajunglediscord.io. We'd love to have you if you're not already a part of the community. And of course, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
We forgot about
When did
Gabe.
you get here?
Oh.
I didn't even know you were here.
Oh, wait.
What are you doing here?
This is awkward. See you next time.